I'm going to, since we have a good intimate crowd, so feel free to stop at will, and then Errol and I are going to have a fireside chat, right? So first, I'm Damon Lester. I'm the author of Taking the Cape Off. But before I start, so many of you who do know me or who don't know me, I want to really just tell you what the world said I was. Because that story really is the story to tell. I was the dealer principal, Nissan store here in Maryland, Nissan of Bowie. Wound up being top 100 dealers within Nissan out of the 1,200 within my second year of business. Award of Excellence winner. I was also past chairman and past president of NAMAT, National Association of Minority Auto Dealers, which many of you also know me for. I've been there for 22, 23 years. And that was good. It felt like perfect on the outside, but on the inside, brother was tired. And so I went from an accountant to a dealer principal. I'm from West Philly, and born and raised like the song. And I wound up going to Temple University, became an accountant, worked overseas at a public accounting firm, and I've been all over the world. I've been in Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Moscow, Tbilisi, Georgia. Anywhere there's been a bombing, political unrest, all the former Soviet Union countries, I've been. And it was good. I was an average kid, went to school, lived in the projects in Philly. But I had that grit, I had that drive to want to be better. And so, but that's really when the Cape started to form. That was when the Cape started to form once I got out of school. It's like, I have to be like this. So where I grew up is the only time I saw people in a suit was at church. That was it. When I got to high school, I went out, my high school was about an hour and a half away. That's the first time I had, around a lot of non-minority folks. And at my basketball games, I would see the parents in their suits coming from work to see their kids play. And I want to be like that. But again, that was the first time I got exposed to seeing people in suits. Besides Easter Sunday, you got to come out strong with your suit. And so I was recognized. The store was recognized. I was recognized and celebrated, and really no one really asked what that stuff costs, right? What's that mental toll? Because there's a lot of energy to try your best to become successful that you burn. A lot of mental energy that you don't replenish back if you don't know how to. I'm the only person in my family that ever went to school. Most of the folks that I grew up with, either in jail or they dead or they got packed out of jail. So I made it through, right? I'm the anomaly. And so that celebration and being recognized, that came with all of these things. Every time I was celebrated, I was recognized. I was on these podcasts. I was doing this interview. I became a automotive news champion of diversity. I became the thought leader in the minority auto realm. Me, kid from West Philly. Became to Automotive News All-Stars, which is a hard thing to get in because the industry votes you in. That's not something that comes with the peers. And so life was good. I was wanted, I was recognized, I became Time Magazine Dealer of the Year, nominated from my state of Maryland, my peers. That was cool, right? That was a heck of an accomplishment of what I was able to do. And that was good. I became the Nissan Award of Excellence winner. But all of that takes a cost. I'm running the association, president of the association, chair of the association. I'm doing lobbying on Capitol Hill. I'm doing stuff at the state level, lobbying from very different states. And switching your brain like that takes a toll on you. But I never knew that was the weight that I was going through. And so I became an industry voice, not necessarily a minority voice. I became an industry voice that people who didn't look like me, I helped. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Because you can't help a certain group without helping everybody else. But that's what I became. So I fought for everyone, particularly the smaller dealer, the small business. I was all in, all gas, no brakes for small folks. Because that's what the auto industry was built on. It was built on people, the mom and pops in their communities, being pillar to those communities, providing the financial incubators to those communities, and that's what make America great, to a certain extent. And so I've met with several different presidents of the United States. This picture right here, we did tax reform under Trump first term. Kid from West Philly. You see there's only two people there, a person of color. It's myself and Jake, who used to be the lobbyist for Daimler. So I became this voice. I became this voice probably more popular than NADA's president. Because people knew, they called Damon, Damon's gonna get it done, but also I'm gonna keep it real with you. All this stuff that you're hearing now, like, man, you know that stuff, you can't sue the government. What's going to happen? You're going to get some ramifications. You can never do that. And so all of that was part of that cape, being everything to everyone and doing everything that I could to people please. But no one saw what that cost. It was a lot of sleepless nights, reading stuff that I'm not a lawyer, but learning the laws, being able to tweak that back and forth. There's a lot of things that you know about the silence of the struggle because you have to now bring your business life, your personal life, and somehow those things, they merge like Voltron. But there was a version of myself that was hiding because I never realized that we talk, we do so much stuff for work and you travel, you really don't get the chance to take it in. And that's our fault, that we don't stop and take time to take it in. Because leaders aren't supposed to crack. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to know it all. We're supposed to be the people to get it done. Because many of you guys are in here, ladies are in here, not because you're perfect, but you're reliable. You get it done. You're dependable. And those traits make you great. For whatever level of leadership, whether you're at home, whether you're at working at a dealership, you own a store, you're a vendor, you're a VP, all of those things encompass what make you great. And then my dad died. This picture is the last picture we took before he passed. We do an annual fishing trip. Here in Maryland, we do rockfish. That's a rockfish, or striped bass, some people may call it. And those are my two sons on the end. And I still didn't stop. All right, I kept working. The association needed me to do this. I needed to be back at the dealership. I had to take care of my mom, the only child, so I'm going back and forth to Philly. And that cape kept getting heavy because that's what it looks like from the outside. I'm being everything, I'm being dependable, being reliable, and I'm never missing. Never miss. Because I couldn't fail. I couldn't let a ball drop because I knew the ramification. If I stopped and that ball dropped, the cookie crumbles. And that's what took me out to a certain extent, right? I never took that time. Once my dad passed, I wrote my dad's obituary. I looked at it all like a transaction at an AMAT meeting, to be honest. I was back at the store after we buried him. 2 weeks later, I had to be at NADA because I spoke at the automotive forum. I didn't know how to grieve, didn't know how to mourn. I'll figure that out later. Because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And many of you here understand the importance of the deadlines that we can't miss. You can't miss signing those deals. We travel, to try to make our goals. Manufacturer has goals that's set for you on a monthly basis that you can't miss. You can't miss your P&L on a monthly basis. And in some instances, for me as a dealer and a Nissan dealer at that, there were some weeks I had to make sure, can I cover payroll or do I pay off these cars? That's real. And those are decisions that leaders have to make. Not because we want to, not because we need to, but what we have to do it. And so, you're not your volume. You're not the first deal that you signed. You're not your worst month. But you're also not your bad month, your best month. You're a human. And we have to try our best to figure out how can we make sure that our business life and our personal life don't merge like Voltron. And that matters. And so, going through the mental crash that I had, I never realized that God never asked me to wear that cape. He didn't call it perfect. He called the qualified. He qualifies you through our journey. And when you're in this form of gotta go and gotta make it happen, you really never get a chance to stop to realize that. And so during my time to myself, I looked up a couple words in the Bible and did a word search. And, the word perfect shows up a little less than 100 times in the Bible. Perfect means teleos, which is the word that means complete or finished. Doesn't mean perfect. It means complete, like a ripened fruit. But a ripe fruit got blemishes on it. The word good is over 700 times mentioned, but that's because God did that on purpose. He knew we were not supposed to be perfect. We are supposed to come to him as we are, and he helps us become who he wants us to be. That's the grace that God shows us. And so I didn't realize that until after I had to stop and life stopped for me. For those of you who don't know, I had a mental crash and I had several attempts of suicide. I didn't want to be here anymore. It was too much time that weighed on me that I could not see the end of that tunnel. I really couldn't. Because when you're walking through that fog, you don't know if you're going to bump into a rock, you're going to fall in a ditch. I could not see the end. So my thing was, you know what, Dame? Deuces. So I've tried several times. And thank God I'm here. And that's because I'm supposed to be here. But going through that, it made me look at life at a different level. And what I mean by that is that, I have to learn how to sew a new cape on. That was my pause. I isolated because I was depressed for about 4 months, sat in the dark. And that cape that I was wearing was so heavy that I couldn't see my way out. And that time of isolation did help me write. That's how I wrote the book. But it also helped me realize that, I was carrying a lot of stuff that really wasn't mine to carry. I allowed that. Not because I had to, not because I needed to. People asked me. I knew I can get it done. Done. Consider it done. And the had to's became and turned into I needed to. The people asking said, you better to, right? Because then that's that I can't say no. I didn't know how to say no. And that was part of the crash. People pleasing and worrying about being ridiculed because you're saying, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. Because sometimes, and some of you, as we travel, you may sit at the table with your relatives, family, kids, or whatever. Your phone is right there, upside down next to you, because you want to make sure you're accessible. And you're at kids' games, or family games, events, and you're not there. That was happening to me, but I never realized it. And the big one was, what I always did was, I would always, with my kids, if I'm on the phone, I'm in the car, and I know they hear me talking to a dealer or something, hey, be quiet, I'm talking. That was their only time to really take in Dad. I neglected that. The kids are 23 and 21 now, but they give me a little crap, but because I started to pick that up. They started to pick that habit up with the phone. So I started to after realizing this, I started to create my boundaries. And those boundaries are hard to keep up with, but it also gives me and prevents me from giving too much access to a lot of people, or allowing that. That's stuff I can control. And out of the mental survival mode that I went through, one of the biggest lessons is that I ain't in control of nothing. None of us are. And so it's time to sew a new cape. And that new cape says no. That new cape says balance. That new cape says, oops, I think I turned it off. That new cape says peace. It also says that I'm authentic now, or more authentic than I've ever been. And more importantly, I am human. I am not Superman. I am Batman, and I love Marvel. But I am a human being. And it's hard to say and hard to admit that none of us are superheroes. But we have to let our humanity be that superhero versus worrying about a cape that we're wearing. So my new cape has these balances on. And it's tough because sometimes you find yourself going into your old habits. And so the most powerful thing that you can do in any room is the truth of who you actually are. I'm Damon Lester. I'm a kid from West Philly that's done a lot of cool stuff in a short period of time. And it's good. It is good. And it's also good that I have to recognize family. It's also good that your kids matter, because we only got one shot at this. Tomorrow's not promised, and you don't take heed to what and how precious life is until you don't want to be here anymore. You really don't. I used to do triathlons and marathons, and I still bike a lot now, but these new hip and plantar fasciitis, these old bones then broke down on me a little bit. But I found that was my only quiet time that I had was that hour to 3 hours. If I was training in the pool, that was my time. And most of us are like that, whether it's our drive home with no radio on and you paying attention to how the treads sound on the pavement. That's our quiet time. Or you pulling up at home, you just got to sit in the driveway quiet to get yourself together, because your family can't see that you're weak. It's not fair to them. It's not. And I had to realize that, because I used to do all those things that I said. Man, I can't go home. I got to go home now. I got to make sure I'm smiling when I'm just tired. Or you travel, we're at dinners all day. You're shaking hands and you're kissing babies, and we're out eating all day. But when you go home, your family wants to go out and eat. It's like, oh, I don't want to go and have another chicken dinner. I don't want to go to no steak dinner. I don't want to do none of that no more. But you have to. Your family can't. Your family doesn't deserve that. So I'm more cognizant of that now. And so my dad really never got a chance, he never got a chance to see me wear this new cape. And I got to live with that. Because I never got a chance to say goodbye. My dad, my family was here. That picture is in July 22, 23. My mom and dad were here in Maryland in December, right after Christmas. I took my dad to the store, my dealership, because I had got him a Nissan Frontier, and we were doing these uplift kits with the store, so I wanted to show him. And my dad in the showroom, he would close on Christmas Day, and my dad stood in the showroom and was like, "Dave, I don't know why you got this store. You need to go back and do something else." 2 days later, my dad died. So all I have in my head was, he told me I'm doing something wrong. I failed. Not necessarily that he meant it that way, but since I didn't have a chance to understand what that meant, blew my head around. It was like a ton of bricks that just fell on me. And so you gotta take time to tell people you love them. You got to be kind to people. And it's tough. We're in a really weird environment right now. An unprecedented environment of a lot of negative things happening in the world. But sometimes you have to look at things to say, I'm going to call Sandy just to say if she's okay. You good? Or I met Frank. Frank, you good? I texted him a couple of days later after that. Because that check can make someone's day that could probably have a horrible day. So be kind, because we never know what someone's going through. Because I never got a chance to say anything else to my dad. I just have that memory of, what the heck did he mean by that? And so the book is called Taking the Cape Off. It's available on Amazon. I have a website called takethecapeoff.com. It's doing pretty well, and people who have read it, it resonates with them. Whether you're male, female, minority, non, it doesn't matter. Because I think some of the lessons that I've had to learn by me writing, going through it and writing it, you can relate to a lot of it, if not all. I'm available to speak to groups, leadership groups, on balance. The pressure that AI is bringing on people now, which is real. There's this fear of people losing their jobs. But the human side does matter. Human and AI form Voltron. You need one for the other. Thank you guys for coming this morning at 7 a.m. And Errol, I know we're going to have a conversation, so thanks. All right. Thank you, bro. Good, man. Thank you. Good to see you, too.
You had to bring up my Pistons losing last night.
That's all right, man. I'm rooting for y'all, though.
That's how you started the morning.
I'm rooting.
What happened to your Pistons last night? Like, oh, man.
Yeah, man. I was rooting for y'all. That was a tough game.
Yeah, okay. All right. We're going to move past that. We're going to talk about you. All right. All right. But no, seriously. So all jokes aside, first off, and we're going to get, just if you don't know, I need you to know we're going to get real in here, okay? Because we are taking the cape off, okay? So I want to say this. I'm glad that you're part of the 50% and not the 80%. And if you don't know what I mean by that, men make up 50% of the population,
yep,
but 80% of the suicide rate.
That's right.
So I'm glad you're
Thank you.
on the 50%, because that's big.
Yeah,
that's
thanks.
Very big. For people that may have struggled with it, how? Like how did you come back after? Because you said multiple. Walk us through that as far as for you, because that's part of taking the cape off. Because that's how.
You know, after I could look at myself as a failure, and I mentioned that I couldn't see the end of the tunnel walking through the fog, so to speak. And I was driving actually to New Jersey, and I got in an accident. And that accident, I totaled my car, ran into like the guardrail, like 60 miles per hour here on 95. And I walked away with just a scratch on my elbow. And I said, God, all right, I got it. Okay. I got it. Yeah. Right? That was the moment, okay, if that didn't take me out and I didn't try, got it. All right, I'm here. A lot of it is also people just going through it. Errol, it was hard because people say I can't relate, or that never happened to me. But in some form and fashion, it really has, right? People just don't want to feel vulnerable. And so I looked at me writing was very therapeutic for me. Talking to people and folks just checking in on me, not to ask, what did you do today, but just as a human, right? Once you peel that layer back that you don't have that title, the human side comes out, right? And then that circle of friends that you thought was wide, it funnels, because now they don't need you. And so a lesson that I talked about it in the book was things that I looked at were relationships, really were transactional. Hard for me to overcome that because I'm like, nah, I always do this, but everyone can't be Damon. Yeah. And out of that, I had to take that to the part that it couldn't take it personal, because I started to, because if I didn't know you that well, I would have texted you, yo, you good? I just saw you on. That's just me. Yeah. It doesn't mean that everyone has to think like me or have a crystal ball like me, because life happens for everyone else and it keeps moving. But I would always take time to stop, check on someone, whether I knew them or not. But that was the moment, man, where I said that accident. I walked out of it. The tow truck guys came and the cops like, you all right? The airbags all over me. I said, yeah, I'm fine. How am I gonna get home? And I rode in the car with the tow truck driver. He said, where you gonna drive? Where can you drop me off? So I'm gonna drop you off at this exit. And I saw a Cracker Barrel. I went and ate Cracker Barrel, called an Uber to pick me up and take me back home. And after that, I was, okay, it's time to fight, right? And this level of fight, it's a different level at 53 versus when I'm 19, 20 in college and I'm fighting to get my first opportunity. Now I have to fight, this new version of me is fighting to reinvent myself. And this version of me is, how can I pour into other people to learn from the mistakes that I've made?
Yeah, and I think that's, first off, I commend you for that, because it is, the fight, it shifts, it changes, but it's always ongoing. But it's recognizing what the fight is. Mm-hmm. And I think I love how you identified that the fight now is for other people to avoid the pitfalls or the things that led you down a certain path. Okay. And I think that's huge to be able to identify. In taking the cape off and looking back at it now, right? Because even though you take the cape off, it's still there. It still might be hanging up in the closet, maybe you threw it on the floor. But when you look back at it now, as you form the new version of your cape, what are some things that you're excited about that you see in this new version of the cape that you lacked in the old version?
I never took the time to smell roses. For example, I would be in Detroit every year, the auto show. I ain't never been to the Motown Museum. Yeah. I know it's cold in Detroit. I can tell you where the club is. Right. I can tell you where the restaurant is. I can tell you where to stay. I couldn't tell you I ain't never been to that museum. And that's bad, right? I never took that time to take that in. And understanding now where if I'm out riding my bike, I cycle, what pollen smells like versus pollen affecting me, and realizing, okay, this is this. I'm back home in Philly, so all right, that's trash truck juice there. I know where that is. I know that's Philly pretzel right there. That's Amoroso rolls for the hoagies and cheesesteaks. Like now I can distinguish those childhood memories. They kind of have this total recall because back then I didn't have a responsibility, I just played outside, right? And
Right.
so the power of the sun is strong and it's healing. And I take how the sun feels on my face a lot different now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awareness.
Yeah.
That's what I hear you saying. Like it's the choice to lean into and be aware of the little, the grand, and everything in
That's
between.
right.
Because it's very difficult sometimes, like you mentioned, when we get into our mode. For example, how many people here have left the casino since they've been here? How many people have actually gone outside since you've been here? 1, 2, right? And there's, I don't know if you know, there's like a super mall that's like right next door that has, I don't know if you looked at the map, there's a ton of every, so I looked at it, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I just went and I walked the mall yesterday. The same thing, I was feeling like, wait, I've been here. And that's not a bad thing because we're all locked in, right? And there's great value in what we're doing and what we're gleaning from here and what we're gonna take back with us. But to your point, we have to be able to find that balance of both, right? Of being able to say, yes, I'm here for work, but I need to find something. Just one thing that I do for me to enhance me, to increase my awareness.
That's right.
So with the increased awareness, how did you become more self-aware? Because a lot of what you talked about was your awareness and your empathy towards others.
Right.
And one of the taglines that you mentioned in the book is when I learned to take the cape off and save myself.
Right.
How did you get to that point of having self-awareness to say, I need to save myself? It's almost like the airplane, right?
Yeah.
Put
my mask on first, yeah.
So how did you get there?
Hey man, I lost everything. I lost everything. And when I say I lost, meaning I didn't have what I had back then. So I had to sell my store. And part of my crash, because I was just tired, right? And so I couldn't fight anymore because I was just done. But everything that I had from a materialistic standpoint, I had a nice sized house, I lived in development, I had the cul-de-sac, I had the big yard, I had all of these tangible things, but it really wasn't my home, right? COVID helped me realize it was my home because that was the only time we were stuck and couldn't go out nowhere.
Yeah.
And if you lived in the DMV area, we had a curfew, man, we couldn't do nothing. So that was when you kind of really enjoyed your home, but you lived by yourself, right? And so you would sit outside and you kind of talk to yourself. That's also a benefit of being the only child. I can have good conversations with me. But I appreciate things better now because less is actually more. And I don't have to have a whole bunch of everything. I have exactly what I need. I don't have a surplus of stuff like I used to have just because I wanted it.
Right.
Right? I have exactly what I need, and it's a different level of peace that I have now because I can take things in. Someone asked me yesterday, well, what are you going to be yesterday? What are you going to do? I said, hey, I'm on my own time right now, right? I'm going to do what I need to do and see everybody that I needed to see, but I also got to know I have to recharge. This is the largest group of people at the conference that I've been around in over a year. Last couple of weeks I spoke at Glenn Lundy's conference. That was the first time I spoke publicly. So really this is the second time that I've been out, and this is nerve-wracking because you may see Damon as this, but I see you saying, look at that failure, look at that failure, look at that failure. That's how I see things. And I'm working my way through it, even though that's not my reality. But when your brain is in this survival mode, and it will make, like the song, your mind will play some tricks on you. And so now just work in process.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely correct. And one of the things that I heard you say that I think is important to highlight, and you even mentioned it earlier, is the story, the narrative that we internally tell ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Because you came and you told us your story, right? And so you're able to tell your story, but then the question is, what story are we telling ourselves? And I think it's we have to be very sensitive to even how we talk to ourselves, because
That's right.
one of the things that I think that I hear you saying, and what I'm picking up, is that if someone else were to talk to you the way that you talk to yourself, you'd be ready to fight.
I'll be ready to fight. That's right.
But we do it every day.
We do it every day.
We talk to ourselves more hostile than we would allow someone else externally to talk to us.
Yep.
But we don't fight ourselves.
We don't fight ourselves.
You know, and so one of the things that that I will keep continuing to encourage you on is just doing what you're doing, reminding yourself every day that old cape is gone.
Yep.
The new cape is here, and you're more than enough.
Yeah.
And you just showing up. Like you said, showing up as you, telling your truth, is enough.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to get into was the loss. Right. You talked about the loss of your dad. We had the opportunity to have a conversation beforehand. I lost my father in top of 25, January of 25.
Okay.
And I want to have a conversation, not just for us, but for everyone. When that significant loss happens, because it was one of those things, I identify what you mean about the conversations. My father, I was just coming back into town from work, and my mom called and said, hey, I haven't heard from your dad. And so that's kind of what started. And so same thing, that loss of conversation, or that loss of saying goodbye.
Right.
What are some things for those that have suffered that loss and are grieving and going through it? How did you begin your grieving process? Because one of the things you said at first is, I just kept going. When did you realize, hey, I need to stop and I need to take time to grieve?
It stopped me. They say in order for you to grieve or mourn, you have to have a release. Yeah. And that release could be tears, that release can be anger, it can be like yelling. But I didn't cry at my dad's funeral. I spoke. I literally treated it like I was at NAMAD and I was at the podium and this is this and this and this and this and this. And I looked at it as that transaction because I knew I had to be there for my mom. Right? And it was just she and I now. And so I didn't have that release until later when things got hard and my dad had this way of, like sticking it to you to make say, you know what, I'm gonna bust your ass, right? And I was looking for it and I didn't do it, I didn't get it. And to this day, I still call my dad's phone and I want somebody to pick up. Right now it still rings. I know my mom shut the phone off, but it still rings. And everything that I had, Errol, was when my dad passed, all his past voicemails I had saved, gone. I couldn't even have his voice. So I didn't have, all right, if I just can hear him say, hey, Day, I would be okay. But I didn't have that. But when I started to search, that was when I had that release, man. And it was therapeutic in a way because after that, my mom said, your dad was proud of you. He never told you, right? And when I went back home to clear out his stuff in the garage, you have a dealer plate, right? And your dealer plate has the name of your company. And my dad had the car that I bought him. He kept my temp tag, the dealer temp tag that had Lester Automotive, and he pinned it up in the garage. I was like, yo, he was all right. Right? So that was really a confirmation for me, made me feel good. But I never heard that from him, right? He was always like, you got a B, you failed. He was that type of strong person, so, yep.
It's crazy in a good way because there's so many parallelisms. I understand exactly where you're coming from. My father was the oldest of 6. Same thing. My father never had the vocabulary, and not in a negative way, but that's just not how he grew up. And so I remember at a point where my dad never said I love you, and it dawned on me. My dad would end every conversation. He'd be like, "All right, now take it easy."
Take it easy.
And at one point, it dawned on me like, "Oh, that's his version of I love you." So I just started saying it to him, like I love you, and then he would say it back. It wasn't that he was opposed to it, but he never got that, so he never knew how to instill that, right? And so now I think our job, right, obviously, is to take that mantle and then now continue forward and moving and finding that direction to increase that vocabulary for our children. Now you mentioned 21 and 23. And so now that's that next legacy that's coming up. And I have an 18-year-old, so that's that same thing, right? But I think one of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit more, because you mentioned you did your father's obituary, right? And actually, I'm the same. I'm the only child too. Same thing.
Yep.
I did my dad's obituary. But the one thing I wanted to highlight is how sometimes the same situation can cause a different perspective. And why I wanted to highlight that is because we all carry certain weights and struggle with certain things. And really, the important piece, because you also mentioned finding the people that were there for you when you needed it. And the people help shape our perspective. When we get with the right people, they help shape our perspective, right? And even if I can use a biblical example, I think it was important. For instance, Jesus had the multitude of disciples, but then he chose 12.
That's right.
He said, you 12, I need you close.
Right.
But then out of the 12, he chose 3 to say, no, I need you even closer. Right? And what that shows us, that example of relationship, is we need the multitude, because the multitude is going to help in some shape, form, fashion, or another way. But then we need that trusted circle. But even within that, we need closer, because it's important. When my dad passed, and I took on this, I felt like, because I know you mentioned it, like, hey, this is another AMAT, another work event. For me, I looked at the perspective of like, this is my opportunity to honor him. And so I took it almost like, no, I gotta make sure everything. So in the same grieving way, in that moment, I didn't have the chance to grieve. I celebrated in the sense of, I want you to feel honored. I want you to be honored. I wanted to highlight, even though we lose, we still keep and maintain. You mentioned that you have the voice of what your dad said to you last. Tell me about some of the positive things, or tell me about some of the things, memories that you keep with him that make you smile.
So you had what your dad would say is your closing. So my dad, every time I would come home, we would say, yo, that was his point of, hey, what's going on? So that was our call and repeat, or I guess, so to speak. And so my dad really poured more into the grandkids than into me as growing up, right? Growing up, and in the hood, you only know happy and angry is F. There ain't no middle. There ain't no middle ground. You either happy or you ready to fight. And so I had to take that, because, you grow up, you fall, get up, man, stop being a punk. Don't release, don't cry. Right? And I had to realize that. I was glad when my kids were growing up that, yeah, okay, you fall, it's all right, I got you, brush it off. You'll be fine, right? It's okay to cry. But yeah, I look back now at some of the stuff he said, but it was to push me to be better, or push me to be great. But he was overly critical of me, because that's how his dad was. My dad was a truck driver, and so I used to, ride and go on trips with him when he has to do his deliveries and stuff when I was a child. But once he passed, all of those memories came back, right? And that was like precious time that I will always remember. Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. It's so important because, like you mentioned, when the cape starts forming, right? A lot of our